want to welcome everybody to March's Friday Live. We have this meetup, which is our FileMaker, Claris community, as well as FM BetterForms developers. We have this once a month at typically the last Friday of every month. We try to have various topics and things like that. So this month we're going to talk about some things mostly related to DevOps and FileMaker hosting and version control and all kinds of things like that. I want to jump right into things right away. In the meantime, if you have any questions, please feel free to either voice up or ping us on chat, and one of the team will read it out. All right, we have a few things that we want to talk about, just some new features and things like that in BetterForms. We're just going to go over really, really quick. We have a new client portal template, and Pearson's going to be doing part of his UX presentation on that in a few minutes. So I'll leave some of that. Version control and rollback, we've just released that, and that is going to be into production next week, probably Monday or Tuesday. And that's very, very exciting because some of the things you can do with that are the ability to roll back and to make mistakes in your code is going to be pretty awesome. All right, so we'll jump right into things, and I'm going to pass things over to Pearson.
Sure, thank you. We want to start off with showing the new client portal?
Yeah, I think that would be a great idea.
Okay. Well, let me pull that up. And I want to show kind of a before and after of this client portal, and kind of show why we changed certain things, what I was looking for to improve. Right, here we go. All right, yeah, so this was the client portal that we were working from. I'm sure some of you might be familiar with this. This was one of the templates that is available. And this is kind of just an example of a general portal that someone might use. This example shows all these different invoices. So we have some widgets up here to show just some additional information about the data in this mock portal. So we have how many contacts do we have, how many outstanding invoices, the widget accuracy, and then in this table here we have some just some information about each of these orders. We have the date, a description of what it is, the amount, how much it costs, and the status. The status, like these elements seem to be a very common theme from what we've seen in our client work. Everybody seems to need a dashboard of some kind to show a lot of information about maybe the invoices they have, or maybe certain receipts that are being tracked. We just noticed that this is a very common theme. So what we wanted to do was create a more accessible template that people can use and not have to change too much about, so that it's kind of working out of the box. So one of the main things that I wanted to change here was just right off the bat, very surface level, but the styling. What we want to do is make this template, and any app that we make, we want it to be inviting and something that is worth looking at, you know? We want it to be appealing because when you're using some software, I think that it's similar. You can see it in a similar light as when people are cooking at a restaurant. You know, they say that you eat with your eyes first. So if it could be an amazing app that does everything you need, but if you log in and it doesn't look very good, or it looks off in some ways, it might set off a bad first impression. And I think that can have an effect on people's experience, because what you want to do is provide a positive experience, something that people aren't going to roll their eyes at or stress out about when they're using it. So in that sense, just some general touch-ups, maybe changing some colors. I wasn't a huge fan of the kind of this grayish tone. The other things that I wanted to improve on were, making this design more purposeful. So here, and I know this is kind of this was an early template that we made, but just certain things like, what does widget accuracy mean? What does the 74.2% actually mean? Does that mean anything to the user who's using this? Maybe, maybe not. This might have just been just kind of an example of something that could be added here, but we wanted to make it more, or at least in a template, we wanted to show more purpose in what these widgets could represent. The next thing was the table legibility. When you have a table like this, this is meant to provide information, but when we see it here, there's not a whole lot of information that helps us as someone who's trying to use this software. What are these? I mean, I know that these are open orders, but what is the identifier for each of these orders? They're just kind of, they're displayed by date, description, and amount. But if you're someone who is handling hundreds or thousands of orders, you need some more ways to actually identify which ones are which. So maybe that's an identifying number, maybe that's a name, or maybe that's a type of order. Just some ways to actually keep this organized and understand what you're looking at. The next thing, kind of a small thing, but something simple, is units. Is this information, is the data being used in here using some form of a unit, and can that be displayed? So this amount, we can infer that is dollar amount just because of the context of this page and the number that looks like it could be a dollar amount, but why not just put a dollar sign there? That makes it a lot easier to look at. It makes more sense. It's more familiar. So what we did was we created this new template showing mostly the same information, but just trying to make it look a little nicer, add some more purpose to it, improve the table in these ways that I described, adding a dollar amount, showing the invoice number, who is the client, the date, moving that into the table so it's not the very first thing you see, trying to prioritize what is the information that this user is actually trying to look at. So in this case, we have the identifying number. We know who it's for. We know when it was made, the amount that it's that is handling, and what is the status. So here we have more examples of the different statuses that can be used, and I think that makes it a lot easier to use and more purposeful. Another thing was the lack of actions on this version. What is the person actually going to do on this dashboard? Here, what we have is just a table that you can click into and maybe select an order. But other than that, there's really nothing that can be done. And so we wanted to change that, give the option to download these, delete them, create a new invoice. Those are the types of actions that would be useful to someone using this dashboard, and something that maybe someone would be missing if it wasn't here. So as a dashboard, I think we made a lot of great improvements, giving some options at the top here as well, giving this person a more connected sense to the software. They have their account that they can check their settings for, log out from. They have a notification system at the top here. Just as a template, we haven't fully fleshed that out, but just providing this or providing that capability in this template, just showing what can this template be used for, how can it be manipulated, because everybody is different, every project is different. So we wanted to just kind of cover a wide range of bases so that anybody who downloads this template or who uses this template can remove stuff that they don't need and have hopefully most, if not all of the stuff that they do need already prepared out of the box. So we've done a few more pages as well. Here we have the invoices, and this is just another table representing the invoices in this database. Here we've done just added some more capabilities. So we have split up into open invoices, paid invoices, in all invoices. And this is a scenario where you might need to separate these into different categories. A quick way of filtering your data here. So in this case, we have open, paid, and all, but anybody else who's using this, they might not need a kind of a past, present, and ongoing categorization. They might have something just completely different. Like these are receipt invoices, or these are client invoices, and these are different types of invoices. We're just providing a structure that people can use to cater this template to any of their business needs. So here's just, yeah, like I said, an easy way to organize and filter out your results. Even having a search bar here to filter more granularly. We thought that was an important feature to have. Next is the contacts page. Here, we have a range or a list of contacts showing what their role is, a picture of them, their email, calling them. But what I noticed here was, we have pictures for people, but they're so small, it's not even worth including here if they're going to be that small, because you can't really, you can't even see this person's face unless you really squint or zoom in. The emailing and calling, if you're on your desktop, calling someone, what does that actually do? Am I trying to actually make a call from my computer? Probably not. What is the user actually looking for? Probably just some contact information that they can copy and paste into something else. Maybe type in the email into Gmail. We don't need a quick link to open your mail app or whatever. So what we did was just make this a little more a little simpler. Just showing the phone number here and showing the email here, enlarging the pictures, making it actually worth including. Because I do think pictures can often be an asset. They're good to have because maybe you don't remember someone's name, or maybe just this picture is a faster way for you to scroll through a list of people rather than looking for everybody's names or reading everybody's names one at a time. So I think pictures are important, but if you're going to use pictures, make sure that they're actually worth including, or make sure that they're actually usable or legible, whatever you might call it. And the account settings is the last page that we made some improvements on. And this was just a very early example that never got fully fleshed out. But what I noticed was that obviously lunch preference, I think that was just kind of popped in there, but you don't need lunch preference in your user settings. First name, last name, email address, those are good, but there are so much more. There's so many more settings that someone might need in their account. So what we did was just kind of give most of the potential account settings that you might need. So here we've split these up into sections. You have your profile section. This information will be displayed publicly, so be careful what you share. Just kind of giving a context as to what does this section actually control. This is my profile, so these are my names, my positions. I can include a picture, maybe even an about section, maybe a bio, whatever the case may be for your particular app. We just wanted to give some options there. Contact information, that's kind of a separate thing from your profile. Contact information is a little bit more intimate because maybe you don't want to display your email and phone number everywhere. So giving some context as to what this section controls, showing that this is also displayed publicly, so be careful what you share, just letting the users know, hey, this is where your information will be shown. So if you choose to show it or not show it, go right ahead. We have a required symbol here, so maybe your email is required, but your phone number is just optional. Next, we have the company information, the name, the company address, phone number, and at the very bottom we have these notifications. So controlling the notifications, we think, is something that I'm sure a lot of you guys might have dealt with or want to deal with or want to implement into your apps. Just showing the options to include newsletters and any kind of reminders, checking these off, giving the user more control over what they want to see from you, whether it's from a client side or even internally. these businesses, maybe, or as a business, maybe you don't need every notification at all times. If you're expecting hundreds of notifications a day, maybe you don't want that to be popping off at all hours. Maybe there's these notification settings that can be changed and manipulated so that the user, whether it's public facing or internal, giving that user more control over what they're going to see on this interface. And the very last thing, changing password. It's a pretty important standard setting, I'd say, just in case, it is recommended, I think, to change your password maybe like a few times a year. I'm not super familiar with the norm, but having that option is important to have just in case someone, you know, uh, someone needs to do that. We want to just provide that automatically right out of the box. But yeah, I think there's some other functionalities in this template that we have. I think creating invoice, that one is still being worked on. I think creating information. Oh, looks like, yeah, adding a contact. We have this ready to go. So yeah, we just wanted to improve upon this previous template and have something that anybody can take and work with. And we just want to make it easier to grab some ready-made product, change a couple colors, change a couple words, change some data or whatever, and have something working really quick, faster than what how long it might take to edit a template like this.
I think there's also an invoice detail. I'm not sure if you did that one. I think that's another page.
Right, yeah, clicking into an invoice. Yeah. So here, yeah, we have, if you actually want to select an invoice, you have the option to download it. You're seeing all the information here. Another table showing, this would be an example of, I guess, an order from this medical company, showing the date that it was ordered at, the address that it's being sent from, and the items that were in that shopping cart for that order.
Super. So this template is really, this is available now. We just released that. This was built by one of our team members, Hassan. And we released it as a beta template because there's going to be lots of little things that people have suggestions for. But the idea here is that you get something right out of the box that you can kind of use as a basic theme, so you're not really struggling. It is an intermediate level template. I wouldn't say it's super beginner because there is a little bit of custom parts in here. There's a lot of little custom widgets and things, but that's the beauty of it. You can keep stuff as simple as you want with just a very, very simple but BetterForms element, or you can dig down deep and add your own components in there as well. And this one has a little bit of a mix of that. Actually, I have a couple of small examples that we built just internally for that. So I'm going to switch back over if you're all done there, Pearson.
Yeah, I'm all
hey,
done.
Can I ask a couple things about, or point out a couple things?
For sure.
This page, when you have a big screen, as you do, Pearson, it's pretty stretched out, and I was just wondering what you think about having a limit or something. And if you do that, should it appear in the middle or at the left, or what? You can just
Yeah,
that.
that's a good question, and that's something that I'm still working on is responsive design. How wide should something actually get? And personally, from what I've been working on, I think that the content of a page does not need to stretch the full width. Like you said, it gets pretty wide. I'm working on a 27-inch screen, which I think is I guess the high end standard, or like a standard size for like a large screen is 27 or so inches. So when I design, I'm typically designing on a smaller screen because I think that's more common. But there are the outlier scenarios where someone has a wide screen like mine. Maybe someone has an ultra wide screen, even wider. We don't want this panning the entire width of their vision. So I think limiting it to a certain size and keeping it left aligned, I think is a pretty common standard. I've seen some interfaces where it's kept in the middle, and I think that really depends on the rest of the interface. I think when you have something like a sidebar on the left side, you don't. I typically wouldn't want to see the content in the middle, because then there's a large gap between what's in the middle and you're just all that negative space on the side when you're also looking at the sidebar.
That's exactly why I asked, because it just isn't obvious to me what the solution is when you have a sidebar.
Yeah, and I honestly, like, I would just encourage everyone to look at the apps that are similar to what they're building and seeing what those design patterns might look like. Because like I said, if it's, for me, when I see a portal with a sidebar navigation, I would expect the information and the content within to be left aligned. But there are some websites where the navigation is set at the top, and maybe that navigation is limited to or restricted to a 1280 pixel width, and that way everything is all aligned in the middle. So I would just encourage you to look at your competitors or apps that are similar to yours that have similar workflows, and seeing how they look, and maybe even just trying it out, seeing what you think of it. Maybe if someone that or an app that you're looking at, it's center aligned, but you personally feel like that doesn't make sense for the workflow that they're used for. Maybe that's a scenario where you try the left aligned method and see how that feels, because it's all about the user experience is all about how does it feel to use, or just what does that first impression kind of feel like?
I have a quick question. Do these all work on mobile as well, on an iPhone?
Yes. They're all
Okay.
they're all of the layouts have a mobile component to them. I'll show you that right now, actually.
Okay, great, thanks.
So here's a couple examples of just some very simple apps. This is the original template. Let me just move my zoom controls here. And this template is fine. It's responsive on mobile, so you can use it for anything you want. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to use this. We have, we hardly ever start off with any of our stock stuff when we build apps. We usually start more or less from scratch, because they're all the designs are so unique. Invoices, contacts, same thing. You have a mobile version there, and you can of course change any of that yourself. You're not really stuck with that. We're not saying you have to opinionate your app like this, but we often see developers just throw stuff on a screen, and then they come from a FileMaker world, so they have so much, they're so data oriented, and ask any UX designer, it's like less is more, not more is more. So we're trying to kind of poke you into that direction, or push you into that direction a little bit without limiting your ability. Here's a couple apps we just built in-house just for a couple of things. This is a prompt builder tool that we've been using to work on some AI stuff. It's basically based out of the same prompt. You jump in, you can go through, and in this case, you can build some prompts, and it automatically does all the merging and things like that. This app doesn't even have a back end. It's all pure front end as such, and just uses local storage on the device for memory. But it's a typical example of using that particular feature. You pop your AI key and so on in here instead of the account settings. Here's another app. This is a control dashboard for a web synchronization engine for between two different databases. And in this case, you can go through, you have these contexts of contexts, and you can set up some settings that go in there. And actually, there's no devices in here, but we don't really have a lot in here. Yeah. So that's the same type of an idea where you're taking that template. In this case, it got rid of all the stuff you don't need. Just shut it off. Don't delete it. Just shut it off, hide it, and go from there. All right. Anyhow, that template is available now, so you can try that out. It is in beta. Don't go changing all your stuff because there's something new. Have a legitimate use for it is my recommendation. I want to talk a little bit about. Oops, my computer froze here again. I've been having some issues with my machine today, so I apologize about that. Hopefully, you can still hear. Switch, there we go. I want to talk a little bit about environments and in terms of managing environments. BetterForms has the ability to have multiple environments, and a lot of people are not sure really about best ways of configuring those environments. So the context or the concept of an environment is that you have it's a development area where you can make code changes without affecting something else. So that's it's isolated or siloed to just that. Not everybody has a proper development, staging, and production environment. We find, I think, maybe about 10% or 20% of our users have actual development and staging or production servers. Very few of them have all three, but some of them have both versions. And later on, our guests today from Proof+Geist, Todd and Angelo, are going to be talking a lot more detail. So I'm not going to get into too much about that type of stuff. But I will talk about just some strategies that you can have for managing environments and what the differences are. A lot of people have asked us, like, what does version actually mean here? And when I deploy, you can see I have two different, this is my demo file here. I have two different environments. I have a what I call a development master environment and a production environment. And development master one is at version 45, and my production one is at version 41. So what's happened here is every time we make changes to our app or our site, we automatically create a snapshot of that data. So if you make changes to a specific page, we're taking snapshots in the background so that you're gonna be able to roll back. And Andrew will demonstrate the rolling back in just a few minutes here. So as I want to test my app, I may or may not want to test that app with production data, or I may want to just test it with development data, depending on how radical I've made changes. And this is really a developer preference. You may want to deploy it deploy it and use it with your production data. That would be like more of a staging environment, or you may want to use it with your development data, which would be more like a test environment. For us, with our more complex apps, we have 2 or 3 sometimes environments in the staging environment here, or staging level. And what we do is we point them to different things. Because BetterForms is super flexible, you can point any domain to any combination of front end, back end, and database as well. So that means whether you're having one FileMaker server with 2 files on it, production and development, or 2 FileMaker servers, however the deployment architecture that you want to have, we can support that. So what we find is really good is that we have a number of people on our team who are working on our app. So that could be anywhere between 2 and 4 people, almost at any time. So quite often there are things that are broken at that point when they're working on something and it's the end of the day, for example. So what we'll do is we have a separate test environment where we deploy from development into staging. That's using development data, and that way our test person Alex can go through and he can make all of his tests and do anything he wants to do in there. And then from there, if we want to test that into a staging environment, we want to do some beta testing. We want to have a limited audience. We have maybe about 10% of our audience that are that have access to our staging server, and those people there, they can actually use real data, production data, and they can also use the latest front end software, the code that balances with that. So we have these combinations. You're pretty flexible to do that. The versions, what's happening here, some people have this is a real complicated thing, version control. And version control is it's a solved, more or less a solved problem with the rest of the world, but in FileMaker terms, it's not fully solved. We don't really have a notion of true version control. But we have more like date oriented versioning. And what happens here is every time we make a deployment, we know that in this particular case, this environment has had 2 pages. It had some site setting changed and a job application has changed in here. So when I go to deploy this, at that point in time, we create a new snapshot that will become version 26. So if I go to deploy this to production, the system takes a snapshot, it builds all the pages in the production environment, and it's done. So now this is moved up to version 46 here. If I make a change in my development, then it is no longer the same version, right? And then this is something that you have to really, really separate yourself from being hung up on wanting to make changes everywhere. And you have to be a little bit more diligent and sort of deploy from a top-down strategy. If I make a change in here, that change will become version 46 plus something. So something has changed within that. And when I deploy that, that becomes version 47. So I hope that makes sense there. The reason why when you deploy a production environment, or if I make edits in here, let's say I do a hot patch, I find out there's a small typo, I've broken something else because I continue to develop, but my marketing says, well, we got to make a small change over here. So I do a hot patch on my production environment. So this one's locked, but we unlock it and we do that change. When I go to deploy, I've made changes here and I've made changes here. So which one is correct? All right, that's where the challenge comes in. So this is the reason why we say that only the development stage will increase the version numbering. So when you deploy out of this stage, then the version number will increase. If you deploy in a parallel fashion, maybe I have 2 or 3 other configurations of my app, and I deploy laterally, then the base version that this was built on, not the hot patch, because the hot patch is a custom localization, right? It's a custom code change. That will not get deployed with that, right? And that is very, very intentional, because otherwise we're going to be really, really tangling ourselves up with all kinds of different versions. All right, so I hope that answers a few questions. I want to touch base on one other thing too, and I don't think we do this the best by any means, but I do want to talk about deployment checklists just really, really quick, because I'd like to get some feedback on what other people use. We use Teamwork as a project management software. It's okay. But one thing it does do nicely is templates. So every time we want to schedule a deployment, we create a new template. And what it does, it has maybe about 35 or so points on it. There's some subcategories. And we just had a deployment on March 26th. There's a few tasks that are left to be done from that deployment, but this will be the next one. We haven't scheduled a date for it yet. It'll probably be in 2 or 3 weeks. And then we run through all of this stuff. And I'm just going to quickly read just some of the items just to give you to spark your own ideas for templates. And I think it's really, really handy. And I'll tell you why in a second here. We schedule an update. We use Status 24/7 or Status Queue, which is owned by Site 24/7. It's a status monitoring. So we post the change there. We post that to our Slack group as well. When we're ready to deploy, we usually do that a day out. The day of, when we are ready to actually deploy, we enable the development mode, which basically weans off anybody who's on the network. And then we also do a quick test to make sure the editors do redirect to an offline page, or log the user out. We check our backups, and there's a few tasks in here. We use a number of offsite backup sources, and we really find that actually Otto and Proof+Geist is going to talk about this, I'm sure, but Otto has been really, really great for the S3 factor, the easy integration. So I can't stress how easy that is. But because we carry such a high intellectual IP value, we also have 2 other third-party backup sources. We use CrashPlan as another one. So we have redundancy in our offsites as well, and we always check the quality or the data integrity of any of those, because I find one of those things when it comes to offsite backups, if they break, you don't usually know about it. So it's always good to kind of keep auditing that. We look at any internal logs that are in the apps that we may have, and we prune all of those out just to make the migration a little bit easier, because sometimes they can amass a huge amount of records if there's no auto pruning. We update an actual script in the file with a version number. That way we know it's deployed, because when you're moving files around and doing things like that, it's nice to have some kind of really solid thing that you can look to and say, hey, this was the March 27th one, and so on. This is some stuff that's really related to us. We have a systemized system caching. We use Redis cache as an intermediate cache in our network. So we check to make sure that's sufficiently hydrated, because while our database is offline, we're serving apps out of that cache. It's a really solid database, but that allows us to pull things right offline. You don't necessarily need to do that. We decide if we need to do reboots on the server, and whether we want to do any updates. We try not to usually do deployments and software patches at the same time, just because I think there's maybe too many variables there. Let's see, run auto. We use auto to check for deployments, so we have some tasks in here related to that as well. Check our preferences field. This is a really important one because quite often we're adding stuff for preferences. So we try to, whenever we make a change to the database and it's something that has to be manually done post migration and it's not really worth scripting, then we'll make a note and we'll just add a task on here to address that as well. We check for things like the helper file script references. Whenever FileMaker is deploying, sometimes external data sources can get broken. So we just check to make sure that those are all okay. We check to make sure our database reopens up again. We check to see, and we use an admin panel, our own internal admin panel, just to make sure that everything seems okay. From there, we check our APIs after that to make sure all of our APIs came back properly and data is coming in and out of the network or into our database. Then, if necessary, we'll deploy our front end. And the deployment is basically the same deployment we use exactly here. We say deploy, and it deploys the 87 or so pages that BetterForms consists of, and it deploys it into production. We turn off our maintenance mode. We check the version migration. Actually, these are slightly out of order here. We check our version, our proper versioning, and everything was correct. We then check any new features. So in the meantime, we would have added a list of all the new features that we've added, and we go and test those in production again to make sure that they've deployed properly. And we also have some running scripts, some global timers and some system event loops and things like that. And we make sure that that didn't get jammed, because that might have been running when the database went offline and it got stuck in a bad state. Right. That's basically a checklist that we use. I'd love to hear if anybody else has any type of a checklist along like that, because I think these kinds of things you can never have too many points on. And if you've ever read the book, The Checklist Manifesto, it's kind of, one of the key things to increasing safety or building quality is to have those checklists all the time. All right, I'm going to jump over to Andrew, one of our team, and he's going to demonstrate a new feature that is going to get rolled out next week.
Thanks. So Charles mentioned earlier that we plan on releasing this version control feature early next week, but we wanted to give a demo to showcase how it works and how you can utilize it when developing your own apps. So you have the ability to roll back your pages, sites, and environments. I'll start with the page. Let's make a change to the page title here. We'll change a bit of this HTML. Actually, to really highlight the point, let's delete everything. We'll hit save, and we'll leave the page. So I've lost the ability to undo any of the changes I've just made. Let's go back into the page. And over here in the top right, you can see there's a new button here called the rollback. Clicking the button will open up a modal where you can select a version, and each version has a timestamp attached to it. Let's go back a version here. We'll hit continue. There's some explanation on what's going to get rolled back. We'll hit rollback. The progress will indicate that our rollback has completed and we have recovered our changes. So one thing that we would like to get your feedback on once this is released is sort of how this the version numbering works. As of right now, the left version number indicates the version of the environment, and the right number indicates the version of the form. We've had numerous conversations between me, Charles, and Pearson on how to best handle this numbering, but give it a try, see if there's any issues with it, and definitely give us your feedback on that. You can also roll back your sites, your site information. Your site information is your CSS, your navigation, action scripts, some of your settings, etc. For example, let's say we go into navigation and change this test log to something like Friday Live. We'll hit save. Let's say we go into scripts and we'll change some of this on login stuff. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. then we can roll back these changes as well. And because the site schema is linked together, not when I roll back my actions, my navigation will also be rolled back as well. So to demonstrate, let's go back 2 versions here. You can see that my change here got reverted, and my change in my navigation select also got reverted there. Finally, you will have the ability to roll back your environments. Notice here that my environment has been edited. It's currently on version 13. To limit any catastrophic errors, if you have edited your environment and rolled back, any current changes will be saved into a new version, and then you'll be rolled back to the selected version that you've chosen. So here we'll hit rollback to, let's roll back to a very old version of my app. Let's say version 5. A little preamble here. You can see that my environment did get rolled back to version 5. We'll go inside to make sure. Yep, so my title remained the same. I have my slugs have reverted, nothing in my action scripts. And you can see in my version history, a new version 14 has got created, which I can roll back to now.
So this would be rolling forward, I guess.
Yes, rolling forward is technically the correct term there.
Back to the future.
Then we're back to version 14, where you can see that our changes are here. My slug is there, and my action scripts is back. And that's just a quick demo of the version control. We would like to obviously have your feedback on some of the use cases that you might think of, because it is a very early feature and there's a ton of improvements that can be made. That's all for me.
Awesome. Thanks. That'll also get deployed next week. It's already in our staging server behind a beta feature, but we'll release that next week as well. So that's very exciting. I want to talk about our featured guests today. Todd and Angelo are here from Proof+Geist, and they're going to be talking about Ottomatic, their hosting platform, as well as Otto, their deployment software, and how it sort of fits into the whole FileMaker Claris ecosystem. So I'm going to turn everything over to you guys. I'm not sure who wants to speak.
Todd, you want to start, or do you want me to start?
I'll go just real quick. So first of all, stuff's looking really good, Charles. Really impressive work you're doing here, and I think there's probably more we can do to better integrate BetterForms and Otto. We have some new stuff coming down the road that I think is going to be pretty exciting. And around your build checklist in particular, we're working pretty hard on that. It's something that comes up all the time when you're trying to move files from dev to production. There is just a bunch of things that need to get done, and how to manage that, and how to track versions, things like that. We have some opinions and some working code on how that can be made a more seamless part of the process. Doing things like using a sort of a FM, kind of an FM comparison light to make sure you haven't missed changes in your dev files, for example, which happens all the time. You think you look and you forget that you made a change on a layout, and you roll to production, and unless you have some way of actually telling whether that's happening or not, it's going to happen. There's all kinds of things there, and so we're working hard on that. I think just to queue up, first of all, a quick question: is there anybody here who's never heard of Otto? If you can just raise an icon or a hand or something. So I'm guessing it says everybody. Oh, there's a little bit of shake hand. Okay, and good. Anybody not heard of Ottomatic? Same thing. Okay, same guy. So okay, here's another one. So I guess our marketing is working okay. we're getting the news out. I'm going to turn this over to Angelo to go through. Angelo runs Ottomatic, our hosting platform, and he's going to run through some of the features there. And if we get some time, if there's some time and some interest, I can run a quick demo of doing a migration with Otto near the end. Thanks, everybody. Take it away, Angelo.
Hey there. Thanks, Charles, for having us here. On behalf of Todd and one of my engineers, Jesus, is on here with us as well. I'd like to introduce you to a quick overview of Ottomatic, our modern FileMaker hosting platform. So we designed Ottomatic to be optimized for cloud deployments. We have fast, near real-time instance deployment, boot times of 6 seconds or less on most of our instances. We created this out of better than 20 years of hosting experience in the world, and we're constantly improving it. There's some very cool stuff in the works that I'm excited to see released the next couple of quarters. So we'll keep you guys apprised of all of that going forward. So Ottomatic, is currently running in 30 global data centers. And the reason we have done that is to provide low latency endpoints for your FileMaker users. As most of you know, or anyone who has hosted FileMaker in the cloud, latency matters. The closer you and your users are to a POP, the faster your performance is going to be. So we're trying to choose data center partners that allow us high bandwidth and effective speed and storage, disk I/O, memory, and CPU that we require to see FileMaker run on. We have this global low latency network, and we are again focused on the things that matter to our customers, and providing again that optimized performance to a FileMaker server is key in that. FileMaker will chew up CPU, it'll chew up disk I/O and memory like crazy. So you do need something behind it, especially if you're running a very large solution or a solution that's connected to multiple things. Websites, for instance. If you've got something communicating to BetterForms, but you've got FileMaker connections coming in and maybe some ODBC calls, et cetera, you're going to need some performance behind that. That's not just CPU. It's good disk I/O as well, and good redundant networking. I'd like to touch base real quick on our security. We have multi-tier backups in play, meaning we are constantly backing up systems. We're doing snapshots locally. We're doing full FileMaker backups and pushed off to S3 for 90 days of offsite storage. And then we're doing full VM snapshots in there right now as well. We can configure additional backup. We can push it to your S3 or give you SFTP access and some synchronization. So we can customize some of our backup policies and procedures. We have a full active monitoring infrastructure set up to back all of our systems. And basically what that means is we're collecting 15,000 data points every 30 seconds of every instance that we deploy. We're analyzing that data in real time and notifying our engineering team of issues. So process failures, instance failures to be the big ones will be notified immediately. We can notify you, take appropriate action, and get that resolved. Now, we're also monitoring FileMaker performance on top of that. So if we see requests coming in and say you maybe have a couple of PSOS scripts that have clobbered each other due to some record locking thing, we'll get notified of that so we can notify you. We'll open up a ticket, and we'll let you know, hey, you've got a problem on your system. We can help you try and resolve that and see where it goes from there, but it may require a full reboot. Now, we are a managed provider, so we are doing that low-level stuff for you as well. You don't have to worry about that. You don't have to restart services. You don't have to restart the server. We're managing that for you. And again, we're 24/7 support, so we're working on this all the time, and we're getting alerts to this all the time. We've got multi-tiers of firewall in place. We've got external firewalls with advanced DDoS protection. We've got internal firewalls for local networking protection. If you've got an infrastructure deployment with us, for instance, you're going to have advantages there. We'll be able to block internal threats as well as external threats. And again, we're monitoring that traffic as well, so we can run analysis and see if there's anything coming in that we need to be aware of and let you know, so you can take appropriate action as well. And because of our backup strategy, we've got very good protection against potential ransomware issues. Now, we don't allow most customers access to the backend systems. Partners, we make exceptions for partners. They need to get in to do some things. So that does happen there, but we retain access to the back end of the system. We've got bastion hosts in place, so there is no public access to things. And then again, credentials and everything else are rotated very, very frequently there. But our backup schema allows us advanced and adequate protection against ransomware attacks if something should happen. Now, our monitoring, again, I had mentioned before that we're pulling many, many data points per second coming in. Just a quick sample of one of our dashboards there, monitoring FileMaker processes, operations, monitoring system resources, things that we're going to be looking at on a daily basis and we're going to get alerts on. We've set thresholds based on our experience, and then we will actually customize those as we work with customers coming in, so we can get a better idea of what their needs are and what we need to be aware of on a solution by solution basis. Now let's talk about Otto. Otto is bundled with every one of our instances, free of charge essentially. So, we deploy a server, Otto is ready to go on it. So if you get a multi-server deployment with us, we've got Otto on both servers. You've got a dev and a prod. You could do 3 servers. So you've got dev, staging, and prod. And again, you put your migrator on there and you can do your deployments and whatnot. If you're a vertical market provider, you can set up your deployment solution on one server and deploy it out to, 10, 20, 30, 50 instances running Otto. And it doesn't have to be with us. It can be running on your own infrastructure, on somebody else's infrastructure. But Otto is there for you to use and to work with. Otto does support webhooks, so you have the ability to receive webhooks. And Todd, who is the gentleman who just did a review on our webhooks? Oh, you're muted. Sorry.
On webhooks, or he was talking about? He was just talking about Ottomatic. You talking about the?
He was using
London?
the webhook receiver. Yeah. He was using the webhook receiver. He just wrote an article.
I didn't see that one. So you got news on.
Oh, okay.
I'm sure it is.
All right, no worries. I'll think of it in a minute. My foggy brain here from being sick not too long ago. So, in any event, Otto does support webhooks with the bundle of simple queues, so you can use the 2 of those to get data into your FileMaker solution. Additional services we provide infrastructure customization and consulting, so we can deploy everything from a private cloud infrastructure with Active Directory, VPN servers, bundled with FileMaker servers and remote desktop servers, custom Docker deployments, web and node deployments as well. We have a very, very wide breadth of additional services we can offer outside of the FileMaker hosting platform. Managed databases in Postgres, MySQL, do managed Redis for you as well. And then we also have another flagship product for called Apps on Demand, where we're doing FileMaker streaming through an HTML5 browser. So we have essentially remote desktop servers out there. You log into one of those, you're streaming the application, and you can do a local connection to your FileMaker server in that same data center, giving you essentially a 25 gig connection between your client and the server. So no installation of any software on any of your users. You just log into the secure web portal and bam, there's FileMaker Pro. And then you have that low latency, high speed connection directly to your data secured on our back end. DevOps is something that we focus on at Ottomatic. We help with deployments using Otto. We're monitoring everything in real time. We have self-healing built into a lot of our systems. And we have a very experienced team that is monitoring and managing instances and servers for you. You know, we're patching every week, Linux and Windows. We are again monitoring all of the data points that we can monitor, and as we understand more things, we add those in, and you know, you get the advantage of our entire team behind you with our platform. Again, we have advanced disaster recovery options. If something happens to an instance or data, we've got multiple levels of backups ready to go, so we can redeploy you, same data center, different data center, get you copies. And you know, we have additional customizations that we can do there for speedier recovery time as well. And then again, you know, our research teams are constantly coming up with the new technology and new tools that we will apply in real time to our platform, and you'll get advantage of those. You'll be able to take advantage of those with our platform, and you have essentially a full DevOps team to support and manage these instances for you. You know, development servers, staging servers, a good scalable infrastructure that reliable and redundant, and then we have the tools to take your deployments and your DevOps needs to the next level. You know, everything's cored on Otto. Otto is an amazing tool for deployments, and Todd is gonna get into that here in a second. But just wanted to give you a quick overview of that. Todd will do some stuff with Otto, and then if you've got any questions, we're happy to answer those. Todd, you want to take it from there?
Yeah, let me point out that last slide thing that you just posted there, and maybe we'll maybe ask some questions here, because I'm kind of curious what people are thinking. The white label hosting is becoming a thing. We're getting more and more FileMaker shops who are interested in just, you know, they've tried to do hosting themselves, and this is it's a pretty common thing. Like I tried it, but back before the merger, we did hosting for our clients. And, you know, it seems like something that could work. It's not that hard to do. Like if you choose the right provider, you know, maybe not AWS, because that's like, you know, you kind of need an engineering degree to do that, or AWS certification anyway. But it seems like something you can do, and it doesn't seem that hard. And so we did it. But the problem with doing that is when things go bad, which they do, FileMaker applications are all shapes and sizes, and sometimes they, you know, you get these PSOS locks that'll just tank a server, or you know, something like that will happen. The WPE goes down. You know, things happen to these servers, and and if you don't have the support that's already in place to deal with that, you're going to have to deal with it. And the problem, I think probably the biggest lesson and the biggest gain that we've gotten out of, I feel like we've gotten out of merging our old companies, Geist Interactive and Proof and Foxtail, is that it's really hard to mix reactive support and any other kind of work. It's just hard. If you have client work that you're working on, and you have a deadline for a client, and one of your server goes down, guess what? You're going to miss your client deadline. And this is one of those subtle things that, you know, it over the course of a month or a year, it may not really take that much time. The problem is that you do not know when that time will be required. And so the hard lesson that we learned is you really can't mix those two things. If you are responsible for reactive support, you need to have a team in place to do the reactive support, and not rely on the engineers that are also trying to build your products or support your business to do that, because it won't happen when it's convenient. You know, the servers won't go down when your engineers have nothing else to do. They will go down when they're busy trying to get another version out or whatever it is. So so that's what we have. I think that's one of the biggest wins, frankly. It's what I tell people who, we have people, we have partners who come to us and want to look at using us. And, I just basically just say, this is a numbers game. You need to have a number of servers that's big enough to allow you to afford a full-time reactive support person. Otherwise, it's just going to be very challenging to do. And that number is north of 100 servers, I think. You need to have about 100 servers before you can even pretend to have the kind of resources you'll need to do this. So we're managing hundreds of servers. And we have a team that's standing by to do that. I think that's the number one thing. Is hosting seems like something you can do, and you probably can technically, and it may not take that much time, but you won't know when that time is going to be required. And so automatic white label hosting basically means that you have us doing the boring but important stuff of making sure everything keeps running, and you just get to serve your clients, and you can charge them for hosting if you want. And you can just pass on the charges or charge more or do whatever you need. So that's why label hosting, and it's we're getting more and more people signing up for that. Let me just stop there though, and because we're going to change gears slightly into a different topic. So I want to give people a chance to ask questions or maybe give some feedback or like, hey, maybe share some experiences about trying to host things yourself or what kind of issues you run into.
I think I could.
I can wait a long time in silence.
I can speak first.
I go on week-long silent meditation retreats, so I can sit here for a while.
We used to do hosting ourselves a little bit. This is going back maybe minus 5-8 years, and it's okay when you have just a few, right? It's you can kind of get away with it, and you're not super busy. But as a company now, we're just too busy to be able to do that kind of stuff. We do maintain our own network, and we have our own team for doing that. Because there's a lot of customizations and things like that. So we found that it was best that we manage that ourselves. But the FileMaker hosting side, I think, is a brilliant idea, especially the white label stuff. We often get asked ourselves, how should I sell BetterForms app that I built to my clients? And we really, really recommend and push app as a service. And if you could white label something where you're outsourcing effectively the app and the app support, which is somewhat on our BetterForms team, and then the hosting side with Ottomatic, that really kind of removes you as a sole developer from a lot of that maintenance. So we can, we're constantly actively working on our network and making changes. You guys are doing the same thing, and the whole concept of app as a service, where you're basically saying, I'm going to sell you this app. I'm going to build it for you for so much. And then I'm going to charge you, say, $500 or $1,000, whatever number works good for you or whatever a month. And then let these other outsourced companies more or less handle that. I think that's a brilliant idea.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Okay. My experience, first of all, we are SBA. And one of the reasons because we are FBA, because I think that to have a less headache is better to have a good core, and the 51% of the core is to have a server that is robust and don't have any problem. Because you can have the great application that you have, but if it's run on a server that is not robust, you have more problem about that. And for this reason, we are not very happy. We are happy, but we are not happy about the new Linux direction that Claris take, because I think that that you need to have people that have a more level of knowledge to handle some problem like Todd explained. And for this reason, we prefer to use an Apple server because for most the more integration of DBC or other service is more easy, less time consuming. If you have, and if you spend $500 or $800 more in the hardware, and you create your airbag on the left and the right, you are good. But more if you install application that you know at 100%. If you enter in the world that you simply make hosting and you don't know who make the application, who plugin using, and other stuff, you have more percent that what are you installing on the server you cannot control, because on your side you are good, but you don't know if the script is very old or what's happening over there. So this is the reason, because we are more focused to make business with medium, large client, that we can control 99% what we are doing and where is installed. Okay. And so for this reason, I write personally to Todd that we have tried the application that he have, but I think that if you don't want to scale too much, and the white label is to scale a more client possible, you can reduce the risk that Todd explained in a different way if you have custom app for a large number of users. If you have a lot of client and you need a lot of server, of course, you need a solution like that. But sometimes, depend on the project, you can reduce the risk. And this is the reason, because sometimes to set up everything like this, when you install a new version of FileMaker or they make a little bit change, you need to rebuild something, and you need to stay there 4 or 5 hours to control every time. This is my personal experience.
Yeah, I think the SBA case is slightly different, although because you're right, like we're building an infrastructure that has to stand for any solution that gets put up there. That being said, we have a number of SBA people who use our system, because I mean we can customize a deployment server just for them, and then they can put it in whatever data center they need to, closest to their users. And in this country, in the U.S., there's, in terms of AWS, some of the major data centers are only on the East Coast and the West Coast. The middle of the country is empty. LA, Miami, Florida, those areas. The ability to put a FileMaker server in that area to serve an SBA customer is pretty valuable. So that's worked well for lots of our SBA customers. In fact, our main focus is the sort of more advanced use cases of FileMaker hosting. So this is partners who are doing client work, or SBAs. We believe that's where we can add the most value. So I think you're right. By focusing and keeping very tight on what you do, you can certainly reduce the risk of things happening. But you can also just get rid of it entirely by outsourcing the hosting with the right partner. At least that is our marketing story. We believe it. That is what we're trying to do, is become that trusted partner that can handle those issues for you. That said, we'd expect that there are plenty of reasons that people will stay with whatever they're happy with, and we're not. There are lots of good reasons for people to stay where they are. In terms, sometimes they need to stay on-prem. Frankly, it's perfectly valid to need to have your FileMaker server on-prem. There's lots of reasons why that might be the case. And that's where Otto comes in, is that Otto can run on your on-prem servers. And our next iteration of Ottomatic and Otto, which we're hard at work on now, kind of continues to merge those two together, which is to, although it will remain separate, you can begin to think of Otto as sort of Automatic on-prem or Automatic on your own infrastructure. So if you need to manage those servers for whatever reason, you can, and you can still use Otto. So should I give a quick demo of deployment? Does that sound good?
Yeah.
All right. Let me share my screen here.
Todd, I have one quick question, if I might.
Sure.
Speaking of DevOps, testing is a piece of that, and it seems like that's just not something people are talking about. I've seen carbon testing. I've seen your one part article on that. Curious if you have any thoughts on how to go about automating some testing.
I mean, I think we answer. I think I think the basic story remains the same. The key to testing, automatic testing, and the key to, I think, modern FileMaker development in general is to separate the scripts that need to be tested, at least, like, and for them to take JSON as input and return JSON as output. And then how you test it, there's lots of ways to do that. But you're basically calling those scripts with known JSON payloads and getting back the results and asserting in some way that those results are correct. This, by the way, is how automatic testing is done everywhere. I mean, this is not, there's no like, oh, code is just tested automatically. No, in every case that, when you're out there writing, like I write a large number of JavaScript and Node apps these days. And then currently I'm writing tests for the new version of Otto. And it's an API, it takes JSON, it gives me back JSON. So I have some testing tools in the JavaScript world, which make that probably a little bit easier than what's available in the FileMaker world, but it's essentially the same thing. Call JSON, get back JSON, and assert that what you expect is there. And then you can run that as part of the checklist that Charles was going through on a staging server to make sure that the changes make sure that you haven't broken any of the scripts that you are testing. That's still it. It's not really like, and I don't expect there to be a more magic bullet kind of way to do that than that kind of thing.
Testing scripts as an API from an API aspect is pretty industry too. So
yeah, exactly.
It's really, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. You're not taking a second seat to other ways of testing, because this is the same way as all these test environments, Jest and Mocha and all your other test suite of software more or less do. They grab the component, whatever it is, and they run the test and they look at before and after states.
Yep. That is pretty much it. Does that answer the question?
Yep. I appreciate your help.
Okay, great. We only got 10 minutes left, so I'm going to do a quick demo here.
We're not tight for time as well. So.
Share my screen. Let me share a part of my screen. I prefer that. Okay, so close Postman. Close my screens that were set up here, unfortunately. Let me just get these back. So I've installed Otto on 2 servers running on Ottomatic. We've got a demo UB for Ubuntu and another one for I'll have to log in here, demo. Demo Win. So we run, Ottomatic runs mostly on Windows and Linux. I don't think we're doing any Mac hosting to speak of unless it's a very, very special case. So when you install Otto on a server, you get, it's a web app and an API that gets spun up and installed that's running on the server. And this is what it looks like when you log in. And you've got some things that I want to point out real quick. This was a question that came up in chat. Somebody wanted to know if you could get access to the FMS documents directory. And you can see with the file manager here, you can actually upload and download files from the documents directory. There's and a bunch of other directories too, HTTP docs, backups, logs, etc. We also got a log viewer, which is kind of nice, including FileMaker's logs. We think it's actually better than the log viewer that's in the admin console. There's a few other things that I don't have time to get into, API keys and admin API keys, and we're going to focus on migrations here. So one of the things you get along with Otto is you get a file called migrator, and I've already set up a couple of servers, a few servers here where I've connected to Otto that's running on various servers. If I'm going to set up a migration, we'll just call it demo. And I'll pick a from server from the ones that I've already connected to. And so we're going to pick, we'll pick the Windows server for that, and then we'll pick the Ubuntu server for our production server. The password, this is the password for the files, username and password for the files that allow migration. So it could be your full access password, but it could also be a password set up with just the extended privileges, migration extended privileges. And then we're going to choose some files. So I'm just going to choose a couple. I'll just choose, I'll choose LedgerLink and, I don't know, Proof Core, Simple Q. Let's choose Simple Q. We'll choose 3 files. Now, you can override these settings at a file by file level. So sometimes you have different passwords for different files. So you can override that. You can also choose whether or not you want to do a copy or a data migration. Sometimes you might have files you just want to copy. Once you have that set up, we can now migrate the files from the Win server to our Ubuntu server, which is standing in for production. And you can just walk through this wizard process where you can choose whether to schedule it now or right away, which we'll do, or schedule it for later right away. We'll choose not to run a post-migration script, but post-migration scripts are useful for things that aren't going to get handled by a data migration. And there's a lot of those, actually. You're going to have to, one of the things about doing deployments is you have to start thinking about, okay, I know I can, this will import all the data, but sometimes straight imports aren't enough. I might have to massage that data afterwards or repopulate certain tables, things like that. So you can run a script in one of your files that can do any of that post-migration that you want. We'll skip that. And you can also do, this gets into some of the build stuff we were talking about before and the pre-building. I'll leave that for now. We'll come back maybe when we have our new vision of what making a release looks like, which is what we're doing, is we're separating migration. Now we talk about it in terms of we're migrating dev to prod, and that will still be available in the new paradigm, but we're also going to have this concept of building a release, which can then be deployed to multiple production, to one or many multiple production servers. And this was kind of where we dealt with some of that release stuff, but I'll skip that for now.
Is the idea there?
Once we do that, we kick it off.
Is the idea, Todd, that you can develop versions in the future? You'll have like a...
Yes, that is exactly what we're thinking about. And not just versions of your own solutions, but where we have this idea of being able to create a public package of an installable and migratable solution. So we have files like LedgerLink and SimpleQ, and single file solutions are perfect for this, where you just need to get a file onto a server, and so why wouldn't it be great if we had a repo of available packages that could just be installed and configured to migrate or deploy onto a server, kind of thing. So it's processing right now. Let me switch to migrations. It's running. We got some warnings. What are our warnings? Enter the wrong password. I thought I tested that. So let me go back here. This will check and complete it with error. So what happened is I entered the wrong passwords here. I thought it was admin. I thought I just did this with admin and admin. Let me try one more time. It's either admin and admin or demo and demo. Whoops. That's interesting. I must have cleared the admin. Yeah, that should be all set. I'm second guessing myself now. If it's not that, it's demo. I know it's one of those two. We'll run it again real quick and see if that fixes it. So what happened there when it failed is none of the files are migrated. So that's part of the process. Is if any file doesn't migrate, it's the original file is opened back up on the server. So part of what's happening here in the background is when this is happening, FileMaker Auto is closing the files in a production server, making clones and copies in the dev server, pulling them over to production, doing the migration, and then reopening the files at the end of that migration. So if we go back and look at migrations here, we'll see there's one in progress. It's got a progress bar. And it looks like it's about done here. And that time, that was it. So I had the wrong passwords. So you get some nice results on what happened. You can look if you want to dive into the data migration tools output. You can see that here. And then if you want more detail on the log, you can look at timings, how long each of the different steps took, those kind of things. And you can also then just restore this backup. You can restore from the backup. If something's wrong, you can just click this one button and restore from the backup. All the original files are saved, so you can just bring them back. You can also just repeat the migration from here. So let me stop there, and because I know we're at a minute to go. I know people said we don't have a hard stop, but I want to respect people's time. And I'll hang out and answer questions for as long as people want to ask them. But that is Auto in 10 minutes or less.
Todd, is there anything we can do to speed up migrations? I know it's not an Auto thing, it's a migration tool thing, but are there any tips and tricks for bigger files?
So yeah. So the good news is 19.6 solved the biggest problem, which is cloning was really slow. Could be. So first of all, it's important to remember that the beefiness of the server matters quite a bit for migrations and for making the copies and clones. So if you have a server that is not resourced properly, migrations will take longer, and so will the copies and clones. However, 19.6 improves that quite a bit for the clones, in that it doesn't really matter how big the file is. Cloning on 19.6 server it's instant, or the biggest file I've done is still 7 seconds to clone it. So that was a big issue, and that one's been removed. But if you have a large file, and we have people who do 80 gigabytes, for example, weekly, it is going to take some time. And the difference in server matters dramatically. I was talking to Josh Orman, which some of you guys know. He's got a big file, and they changed servers recently, and the server they're using is not as beefy, and they went from full metal to VM, and their migrations are 3 times longer. And for them, the migration went from, I think, 45 minutes to closer to 2.5 hours. And so this gets back to that reason of sometimes certain solutions you may need full metal, which, by the way, we can do on Ottomatic. We don't just do VMs; we have full metal as well, because some solutions, because over years are just big enough, they're just not going to handle a VM well. Other things that we're doing in the new versions to help things speed up is this build process where we'll separate those two things. The build will produce a zip file, which will, if you're doing copying, as opposed to cloning, will improve the transfer speeds. And also for people who like verticals and SBAs, they have this issue where sometimes they want to do they have multiple customers on a single server. So they want to pull over a file set and then use that file set to migrate several times on that server. Right now, we're not optimized for that, but our new version will be, where you only pull it once and then it's there, and that's just what you use. Anything else, or anything that you've come across, Charles?
Yeah. What are you looking at for strategies for some type of a continuous integration, continuous deployment type chains? We're currently working on a server to server sync, and it may or may not end up being a product. But in that case, for our use case, we'll be able to have continuous employment, hopefully that too, continuous deployment. And we'll be able to, basically take one server offline, or one file will say offline, and then we'll synchronize those two files later on for data equilibrium. But are you looking at is there any strategies like that? And also the second part of the question would be, what works well for the average FileMaker developer who's let's say a consultant and they need to manage development and staging or production environments?
So in terms of we don't currently have anything on the roadmap for data sync, although it's an interesting idea and it fits with our broader vision of what Ottomatic should be. So we have to give that some thought. In terms of continuous integration, some of that means also whether or not it passes tests, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if you're doing that, you can kind of do that. I mean, if you want to, I think what surprises people is how much effort it actually takes to set up continuous integration. And again, FileMaker's not the exception here. I mean, it is really tough to do because you need to. I mean, the way this is done, say in the web ecosystem or the broader ecosystem with like GitHub Actions and things. I mean, they're cloning entire databases, spinning up new instances of Postgres just for GitHub Actions to run a bunch of tests automated on the database and then destroying it and then doing all that stuff. To be able to do that, to be able to for your solution to be able to handle that, you have to code in different ways. Mm-hmm. And I don't think the FileMaker community has that experience. I don't think we have that experience, frankly. It's things like feature flags become important. Things like, you may not be able to make a change. You may not be able to change for a database change you could make live on a production server. To do it in those kinds of scenarios, you might have to do 2 or 3 migrations.
Yeah, absolutely.
To make that work in a continuous way, because you make one change that sort of puts the foundation in place, but the code still works.
Yeah.
With both of the things that with part of the change not there yet, and then you make another one which makes which like redirects all the code to the new schema structure. And a third one where you might remove the legacy stuff, right? It takes 3 changes to do that. And FileMaker people mostly just like to change stuff on live and press save and hope that doesn't break. So a lot to do there. Does that get at what you were getting? Was that?
Oh no, that's I was just hoping for a holy grail there, but
yeah,
it is as Todd said, it's a real challenge. For example, the feature that Andrew developed. We've had that feature for months available, and then we just finished off final testing and such. And in order for us to push it out the door, we have to do it in this multi-step because it is hidden behind a feature flag. So we can't just turn that feature flag off, because if we remove the feature flag, that means it goes all the way back to dev again, and then it has to go through the whole process again before we can deploy it. So you almost need a feature, a flag per feature that can migrate all the way through and eventually fade off in some fashion. It's a real challenge, definitely.
It is. I think for most people, what we're trying to do is we're trying to give them the sense that they can code pretty close to what they were doing before, but safely. Like this is for your average FileMaker shop or an in-house person doing development on their own systems. We right now Automatic and Otto run on over 1,000 servers. So we have a lot of different types of people that are using it in all different shapes and sizes. And so, on the one hand, we do want to make sure that, people who are just running a business on FileMaker can do so a little more safely by not making big changes in prod, right? Which is a danger that will come and bite you at some point. So for them, a dev server and a production server, Otto and some thinking about how you roll out these features is a good start. For vertical market people, they need something much more robust, and that's what we're definitely moving more and more towards having support, the underlying hooks in place to allow people to build better and more rich DevOps chains. It's kind of the way I think about it. So separating out migration as one process into build or release and deployment is the first step in that process. We're just making it so that we're building the hooks in so that you could do either of those processes together or separately, depending on what your needs are. And then we can build those next layers on top of it.
I think for the average,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think for the average developer, as you said, they sort of come from a FileMaker, and this is not to sound bad, but like a FileMaker mindset, meaning that we can move really, really quick. You can make some changes. You can maybe make it changes right on right in production, just create a new layout and then suddenly point to that new layout and so on. The fact that you can roll back quickly allows you to kind of run quickly as well, because you can, if you do screw up, then if you have the confidence that you can just flick it back and undo it in some fashion, I think that's kind of a bonus.
Yeah. That's why we always have revert available for that. And we don't since we don't have data syncing, what we don't have, which maybe could consider, is making part of that revert. Can we even do like a back migration at that point? I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that's really possible. But if you catch that change quickly enough, you can restore it. You will have lost any data that has been entered since then, any changes that have been entered since the restore, which is, that's part of the problem that we can't get around. We have, the FileMaker, for most folks, the bond between UI and data is pretty strong, and logic. You can't roll back one without rolling back the other easily. Unlike in the web world.
Somebody asked, does Otto add version numbers in the file via script, or is that something we need to add post-migration? Francis?
So we don't have anything released in Otto or anything on this currently, but that is part of this build thing that we have. Internally, we use a couple of interesting techniques, which I'll mention here. We like checklists are really important, but we also want to automate as much as we possibly can. And so one of the things that we like to automate when we can is version numbers. The only way that we can currently automate version numbers it's such a funny hack. I think it might even be in the migrator file. Well, I won't bother opening up, but we have a table in a file called version. And in that table, there is a single field, and that field is named with the version number. And that could be updated with an execute SQL plugin. So as part of our build process, you can run a script which could update that function, that could basically read it and then update it. That survives migration because it's schema. The old trick we used to do, which was updating the set next serial number value with a script, doesn't work because it's the next serial values are part of what is imported by the migrator, and you certainly would want that to be the case. So that's what we do when we have systems that need it. Is we use either base elements or MBS to execute SQL to change the name of a field in a table that has no data, and it's just a field. Goofy.
I guess the other.
Sorry, I didn't quite understand that, Todd. You change the name of the field, or you change the value that's stored in the field?
No, the name of the field.
Okay.
Because you can't change the value, because the point is that you want, so before when you make a release, you want to upgrade the serial number, right, or the version number, and then you want that to then survive a migration. That's the thing, right? So if you make a clone of that file and then try to migrate it, well, all the values in the fields are gone. There's no values in the fields. So, and the other place we should do this, as I said, was the set next serial. You can update the next serial value via a script, but that also doesn't survive cloning and migration. So anything you put in a field doesn't survive a clone and a migration. So you can't do any of those things. So that means your options are updating schema in some way, right? So some people do it by putting, I think, Charles, you said you put a value in a script.
Yeah, just name a script.
Update, name a script differently, or you have an exit script that has the value in it, right? And those are fine, but they're not automatable. There's no way to, as part of the build process, automatically increment that value. You just can't do it. So the only way that we found that where you can programmatically update schema, which is the only thing that can survive a cloning and migration, is to use execute SQL, but you have to use base elements or MBS, because it's the only one that can operate on, that can do the modify field names. So it can change field names. So that's how we do it. Did I get that clear? Does that make more sense? Whoever was asking that?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, it's annoying. I've been after Claris for a long time to give us basically, they do have this concept of catalogs, which are things that are, the FileMaker has an internal database. They call it catalogs. And they put things like images that you paste on a layout will go in this catalog. And I've been after them for a long time to give us a way to just let us write some data into a catalog and let it survive migration, because that would solve this problem. It would be great. But so far, this is what we got using execute SQL to update a field name.
That was great, guys. We really appreciate you coming out. We're not going to finish up just yet. Andrew's has a raffle that we have some swag giveaway, and you can jump to that. And if anybody has any questions in the meantime, please feel free to type them in or just speak up.
Oops, I spun it a bit too early. So as tradition, we're gonna keep spinning the wheel until we land on somebody who is currently present. If your name pops up and you are in the call, let us know. If not, I'll just hit the respin button.
You're gonna have to jump on your mic quick. I don't think Kevin's here anymore. He's in Australia. He might not be.
All right, we'll respin the wheel. Daniel, don't think he's here, so I will remove. And
it's amazing how many misses we get compared to how many hits. You'd think you'd statistically
we had around 40 signups. So
yeah,
we're getting other ones who aren't here, which is pretty funny. I think Bill.
Well, that's
Bill
me.
is here. Oh, hey.
Yeah.
All
awesome.
right,
Okay,
perfect.
so we have a winner.
All right, Bill, are you part of our Slack group?
I don't think so.
No. Okay.
Can be. If you could send me an invite, I will. But...
Yeah, if you could. Okay, I'll do that. If you could direct message me on Zoom here before you go. All right. Awesome. I'm going to stop our recording. Thank you, everybody, for coming out, and have yourself a great weekend.
Artlist.io